You know, usually when you update the operating system on your phone or computer, you expect it to just run a little smoother. Like the battery lasts a bit longer, maybe the apps open faster.
Right, yeah. Or the interface just gets a fresh coat of paint.
Exactly. It's quiet, it's helpful, and it just hums along in the background, making your life easier.
I mean, it's designed to be totally invisible. The entire point of a modern operating system is to remove friction so you can stay perfectly comfortable.
But imagine downloading a software update, and instead of optimizing your battery, it completely takes over your device. It audits your entire life.
Oh, wow. Like a hostile takeover.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. And it decides that the way you eat, the way you spend your free time, and even the way you feel empathy for others are these massive, unforgivable glitches in the system.
It definitely doesn't want to make you comfortable.
No, not at all. It wants to forcefully evolve you into a cosmic entity. And if you do not comply, well, it classifies you as a virus.
That is just a staggering premise to start with, but it perfectly captures the materials we're looking at today.
It really does. So today, our deep dive is into an intense, incredibly radical philosophical text that you, our listener, sent in for us to analyze.
And it is dense.
Very dense. It's basically a manifesto that seeks to completely redefine what it means to be alive, aware, and human. Our mission today is to impartially map out this aggressive worldview.
Right. The author calls it a Theo-Technocratic ideology.
Yes, Theo-Technocratic. We're going to look at how this text views the universe, human evolution, and the absolute ruthless optimization of every single second of our lives.
We really need to emphasize up front for anyone listening, though. The source material we're unpacking today contains some extreme, completely uncompromising viewpoints on morality in society.
Very uncompromising. And we are not here to endorse these views, or take sides on these highly charged arguments.
Right, not at all.
Our purpose is strictly to act as your guides, decoding the fascinating and intense architecture of the ideas contained in this specific stack of sources.
And you are going to hear some truly wild concepts in this one.
Oh, absolutely. We'll get into why eating a simple apple might be the key to saving humanity, why treating a pet mouse's tumor is considered a literal crime against evolution, and why the author projects maximum concentrated contempt at strangers who just ask for a cigarette.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with a worldview this extreme?
Well, to understand any of those daily rules, like the apple or the mouse or the street encounters, we first have to understand the core premise.
Which is their definition of awareness, right?
Exactly. The author completely redefines the word awareness. Because, I mean, if you ask the average person today what awareness or mindfulness means, what do they usually say?
They probably think of meditation apps like living in the moment, feeling grounded, showing empathy, maybe taking a deep breath to find some work-life balance.
Right, and the author absolutely despises that definition.
Despises it.
Yeah, the text dismisses modern mindfulness as psychological hedonism and esoteric garbage.
Wow. Tell us how they really feel.
I know, right?
Yeah.
To the author, that popular version of mindfulness is just another way to feel good about yourself without actually becoming tangibly better. It's basically a pacifier.
So it's like comparing the modern view of mindfulness to a smartphone's battery saver mode. It's just meant to keep you calm, keep you surviving, and preserve your energy so you can limp through the day.
Yeah, exactly.
But the author's view of awareness sounds more like overclocking a CPU to conquer the universe. So is the author just advocating for a hyper-extreme version of Silicon Valley productivity, or is there a literal cosmic goal here?
What's fascinating here is that it is quite literally a cosmic goal. The text argues that thoughts are physical forces in the universe.
Okay.
So true awareness is not passive observation. It's a strict, applied, martial operating system of the mind. The goal is the super-rational optimization of reality to serve this super-personal project, which is the elevation and expansion of humanity across the cosmos.
That definitely explains the technocratic part of Theo-Technocratic, the engineering, the optimization. But where does the Theo part come in? Because that implies something theological or religious.
Well, that comes from the three massive philosophical streams the author fuses together to build this operating system.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, they pull from the ancient Vedic tradition of pure consciousness, but specifically karma yoga, which is active, efficient action in the world without ego or attachment. You act as a tool of the universe.
Interesting. And the second?
Second, they pull from Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the will to power. But the author interprets this not as, like, political dominance over other people, but as the fundamental biological and spiritual drive to overcome our own human limitations.
Mixing ancient Eastern spirituality with Nietzsche is already a really heavy cocktail. But there's a third element here that brings in the space travel aspect, right?
Yeah, the third pillar is the philosophy of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. He's essentially the father of Russian space research and a movement called Russian Cosmism.
And what did he believe?
Tsiolkovsky believed the entire universe is in the process of waking up, moving toward a higher state of consciousness through reason and technology.
So humans aren't the finish line.
Exactly. In this view, humans are not the end goal of evolution. We're just a transitional link in that cosmic ascent. We are basically the nervous system of the universe trying to build its own brain.
The author uses this really great architectural analogy to explain how this all practically works. They say, imagine you want to build a palace.
Right, the palace analogy.
Yeah, if you just sit around visualizing it, relying on passive mindfulness or, laws of attraction, but you don't ruthlessly calculate the physics and the materials, you don't get a palace.
You end up building a pathetic doghouse.
Exactly, a pathetic doghouse. And worse, by wasting those materials and that time, you have actively increased universal entropy. You've made the universe slightly more chaotic.
But on the flip side, if you approach that same desire with the awareness of a rational engineer, you build the house perfectly. You save time, and crucially, you generate a surplus of resources.
And that surplus, whether it's extra time, extra energy, or extra intellect, is the key to absolutely everything in this Theo-Technocratic philosophy.
It is the foundation of it all.
So if the entire goal is generating surplus, how does this high-powered operating system process our most valuable non-renewable resource? I mean, time.
Oh, this is where it gets brutal.
I know. I'm looking at the mathematical audit the text performs on our daily human habits, and it is incredibly sobering for anyone listening.
Let's do the math the author lays
Yeah,
out. Let's
okay.
assume you have an optimistic 80-year lifespan.
Okay.
Right off the top, you subtract about a third of that, so 26 years just for sleep. You're unconscious.
Ouch.
Then you subtract another massive chunk for bodily maintenance, basic hygiene, recovering from illnesses, and of course, the sheer necessity of working a job just to put a roof over your head.
So when you strip all of that away, almost no time is actually left for free, creative will. Most people, according to the text, are operating in a state of what they call closed-loop awareness.
Yeah, the author illustrates this with the example of a burdened villager.
Walk us through that.
Imagine a woman who knows perfectly how to chop wood, how to tend to livestock, how to survive the winter. Her knowledge is flawless, but it's purely procedural.
She's just executing a script.
Right. She never questions why she does it, and more importantly, her system never generates any surplus energy to escape the loop.
Yeah.
She just maintains the cycle until she dies, and then the next generation repeats it. It's a closed loop.
To break that loop and generate surplus time, the author attacks things we consider totally normal and fundamentally human, like our daily food rituals.
Oh, they go so hard on cooking.
The text literally calls it culinary masturbation.
That phrase alone tells you exactly how the author views our emotional relationship with food.
It really does. The argument is that people come home from work, they're already exhausted, and driven by this primitive, irrational fear of hunger, they spend hours at the grocery store, and then hours chopping, boiling, and frying.
And the author calculates this takes about 2 hours a day.
Which is 14 hours a week. That is nearly a whole month of pure, uninterrupted waking time every single year.
A month of time turned into heat, steam, and eventually bodily waste.
It's a wild way to frame it.
The author's point is that instead of using that time to learn programming, study philosophy, or develop life extension technologies, people are voluntarily acting as biochemical processors.
They're turning valuable cosmic resources into literal waste just to comfort their animal instincts.
Exactly. And this is where the text introduces the concept of resource friction.
Yes. And the ultimate hero of this low-friction lifestyle is, ironically, the apple.
The elegance of the apple is central to understanding their daily practice.
Think about the resource friction of making a complex meal. You plan a recipe, buy the ingredients, lug them home, chop, cook, eat it. And you feel sluggish afterward and you still have to stand at the sink washing dishes.
Massive friction. It just drags on your time and energy.
But an apple. You buy it, you wipe it on your shirt, you eat it while you're walking down the street toward your actual goals, and you throw the core in a bin. The resource friction is almost absolute zero.
You don't even have to wash your hands afterward. It is, mathematically speaking, the perfect optimized action for fueling the biological machine without interrupting the mind.
I am really trying to wrap my head around living like this. Is stripping away all of our cultural rituals like family dinners or the simple joy of cooking actually making us more evolved? Or is it just turning us into unfeeling biological machines?
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Right. If you're listening to this while cooking dinner, the author would argue you are actively contributing to the decay of the universe. That's a massive leap.
The Theo-Technocratic stance on that is very clear, and it does not leave any room for sentimentality. Comfort is merely a byproduct of existence.
And attachment to it is the enemy.
Yes, emotional attachment to that comfort is the enemy of evolution. The ultimate goal is not to be a machine, but to free up your capital, your time and cognitive energy, to invest in a ties to humanity.
So if you aren't using your surplus time to contribute to the cosmic expansion of human intelligence, you're failing the system.
That's the baseline.
Well, if comfort and sentimentality are the enemies of evolution, what happens when we apply this to how we treat each other, or even animals? I imagine charity and empathy don't fit well into this zero-friction model.
This is where the philosophy is perhaps the most provocative. It really challenges our modern sensibilities. The author views sentimental compassion, what most of us just call pity or empathy, as a betrayal of greatness.
Let's look at the street cat example from the text.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
You're walking down the street and you see a sick, starving stray cat. Your immediate human instinct is, oh no, I need to help it. But the author frames this exact act of pity as psychological escapism.
They argue that people do this to get a cheap, immediate hit of feeling like a good person. It's an emotional drug.
So by helping the cat, you're being selfish.
In their eyes, yes. By focusing your energy on a problem you can easily solve, like buying a can of tuna and feeding a cat, you are actively ignoring the titanically hard, overwhelming problems of human evolution. You're hiding from your true cosmic responsibility behind a veil of cheap empathy.
The text even takes it a step further into ecology. They argue that saving that weak cat artificially disrupts the natural balance.
Right, the worms and the bacteria.
Yeah. If the cat dies naturally, its body feeds the worms and the bacteria in the soil. And the author points out that from a purely objective, systemic standpoint, those worms and bacteria have just as much right to the ecosystem's energy as the cat does.
It's a complete rejection of our mammalian bias.
Yeah.
We like cats because they're furry and relatable, but the universe does not care.
But the text provides an even more specific and, frankly, jarring example, the mouse with a tumor.
This one is intense.
It really stood out. The author mocks a hypothetical scenario where a family spends hundreds of dollars on surgery for a child's pet mouse that has a tumor. They call it hellish nonsense.
Because think of the cognitive load required there.
Right. You have to research an exotic vet, secure the funds, arrange transportation, take time off work, and manage the child's emotions.
All of these high-level human cognitive functions are being diverted from the universe and wasted on what the author calls an idiotic goal.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If you see a struggling animal or your kid is crying over a dying pet, the author literally thinks you're a spiritual pest for helping it. Viewing a child's grief as a systemic error feels incredibly cold.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the author's concept of systemic ethics.
Explain that for us.
In this framework, morality is not about making the crowd go, "oh," or soothing a child's temporary sadness. Morality is judged solely by its long-term mathematical impact on the system as a whole.
So the math decides right and wrong.
Yes. Saving that mouse consumes resources, money, and brain power that could have been used for humanity's cosmic mission. Therefore, to the author, saving the mouse is mathematically an unethical act. It is a micro-betrayal of our potential.
The author does offer a solution to the problem of animal suffering, though. And it is a very theo-technocratic solution.
It certainly is.
Instead of wasting time on individual stray animals, they suggest that a true visionary should invent an evolutionary catalyst, like a specific engineered virus.
A virus or a genetic trigger that would rapidly, forcefully evolve cats or other animals into self-aware, human-like beings.
Wait, really? So the goal is to give them the burden of reason?
That is the logic. Don't patch a broken system by feeding strays forever. Make a single, highly complex technological investment to upgrade their operating system so they can solve their own problems.
That is wild.
Once they have reason, they aren't our pets anymore. They're responsible for their own destiny. They can build their own hospitals, and human resources are permanently freed up to focus on the cosmos.
It's a stunningly radical way to view the world. But this worldview isn't just internal, right? You don't just sit in your room eating an apple and ignoring stray cats.
No, not at all.
The author believes you have to actively wage what they call a guerrilla war for the mind in public.
If you view awareness as an operating system, then things like smoking, alcohol, and mindless entertainment aren't just bad personal choices. They are systemic viruses. The text calls them ontological sins.
Let me stop you there. Ontological sin. That is a very heavy philosophical word. Do they mean a sin against a literal God or a sin against the actual physics of the universe?
Ontology is the philosophical study of being and reality. So an ontological sin in this context isn't about breaking a religious commandment. It means you are degrading the very fabric of reality.
Oh, I see.
By dulling your mind with alcohol or nicotine, you're destroying the universe's most advanced tool, your brain. You're committing a crime against the nature of existence itself.
And the author takes this very personally when they're out in the real world. They describe what happens when someone on the street simply asks them for a cigarette.
That's quite a scene.
They don't just say, no, sorry, I don't smoke, and keep walking.
Not even close. They view that casual request as a hostile attempt to infect them with a destructive ritual.
So they intentionally project what they call a maximum concentrated contempt. The author says they will sometimes physically pull down their mask or face covering just to display a grimace of absolute profound disgust.
They look at the person as if they've just offered them literal garbage.
And the text calls this a cognitive intervention. It's meant to be a surgical micro-operation.
The goal is to hit the smoker with such an intense, unexpected negative emotional payload that it bypasses their normal social defenses. It implants a meme virus of doubt into their mind.
It's like being an aggressive pop-up ad blocker, but in real life. I'm really trying to picture this happening on a sidewalk. Are these aggressive public interventions actually changing minds?
That's the big question.
Because usually if you look at a stranger with utter disgust over a cigarette, they don't have a philosophical awakening. They just write you off as a jerk and get angry.
The author acknowledges that people get angry. But this raises an important point about the psychological mechanism at play here. The text argues that a surgeon cutting out a tumor doesn't stop to ask the cancer cells how they feel about the scalpel.
Wow. Okay.
The author doesn't care about the smoker's feelings. The primary goal is to create severe cognitive dissonance. By making the act of sinning wasting human potential socially agonizing, the author believes they're forcing the culture to evolve.
Even if the person just gets angry, the seed of doubt about their habit has been violently planted.
Exactly.
They elevate this kind of public confrontation to almost a holy war. They talk about an archetype of the warrior of the spirit, citing a historical guy named Bogdan the Pure.
Bogdan the Pure is a fascinating case study in the text. He lived in a deeply traditional rural Christian society where alcohol was woven into every single cultural ritual, from baptisms to weddings to funerals.
It was everywhere.
Yeah. And Bogdan made it his life's mission to constantly publicly shame alcohol use in his village.
And he paid a severe price for it. The text notes he was beaten repeatedly by his neighbors, and eventually he lost his eyesight because of these physical beatings.
But the author praises him for it.
Right. They say he paid with his eyes for the right to speak the truth. How does taking a beating actually advance human evolution in the author's eyes? Is it just about one man's purity?
It's about the systemic impact of absolute defiance. For Bogdan and for the author, standing by and letting a community destroy its cognitive potential with alcohol is mathematically a worse crime than whatever physical violence happens to you for speaking out.
So it's a calculated sacrifice.
Yes. By accepting the loss of his eyesight, Bogdan proved that the Imperium of reason is stronger than physical comfort. He injected a massive dose of friction into a destructive closed loop.
This guerrilla war against entropy isn't just fought on physical streets, though. It extends to the digital battlefield as well, the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
The author looks at things like YouTube algorithms that push cat videos or cooking tutorials or endless scrolling feeds.
They don't see those algorithms as neutral content delivery systems. They see them as hostile, predatory entities attempting to hack your animal instincts.
They're trying to steal your most precious resource, which is your attention.
Exactly. And the Theo-Technocratic approach to the internet is what they call surgical information strikes.
Meaning you don't browse.
You don't browse. You don't scroll to see what's trending. You log on, you extract the exact data you need for your higher cosmic purpose, and you log off immediately.
You completely refuse to let the algorithm hook your dopamine receptors. It is total, unyielding discipline every single second of the day.
It really is a fascinating, airtight logical system once you accept the foundation.
Mm.
I mean, if you accept the premise that the only purpose of life is the rapid technological and cosmic evolution of humanity, then every single action has to be justified against that.
Right. From the resource friction of what you eat for dinner, to how you calculate the systemic ethics of treating a stray animal, to how you browse the web, everything must be mathematically justified.
It leaves no room for error.
It is a ruthless, mathematically calculated war against wasted time. So, to summarize our journey through this intense source material, true awareness, in this Theo-Technocratic view, is not about finding inner peace or making sure everyone feels heard.
Definitely not.
It is an active, martial state of optimizing reality. It means viewing cultural rituals as friction, sentimental compassion as a resource drain, and societal habits as literal viruses to be aggressively eradicated, all for the sake of launching humanity out of its planetary cradle.
And again, as we said at the start, these views are highly radical and politically charged in their own way. We are simply mapping out the architecture of this worldview based on the text provided.
Right, we're not prescribing it as a way to live. We are just your guides through the manifesto. But looking at all of this, it does leave us with a fascinating, if intense, thought experiment for you, the listener.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were forced to audit your own life, using the author's strict mathematics, judging every single minute solely by its contribution to the ultimate cosmic evolution of humanity, what cherished daily habit or harmless joy would you suddenly have to classify as a virus and delete from your life?
It makes you look at that phone update a little differently, doesn't it? If your own internal operating system suddenly woke up and demanded cosmic perfection, what is the first thing it would uninstall? Something to think about next time you reach for an apple or, a frying pan.